Yeah, so I'm going to be talking today about what is source water protection. I figured I'd start here. It's a good basis to, I think, bring people together. And so, in the next slide, talk about what is source water. We all have different types of source water, but it's any type of surface water or groundwater feature from which we extract drinking water. So for our own source water areas, that could be rivers, reservoirs, lakes, streams, springs, or a groundwater well. So why protect your source water? There's many benefits to protecting your source water. As we all know in this room, reducing risk from potential sources of contamination in a watershed is key. That can help limit or reduce your treatment costs. Also, you have to meet some drinking water standards set forth by the Environmental Protection Agency and the Oregon Health Authority. And so I have these slides will be shared at the end. And so put a little fact sheet for the Safe Drinking Water Act. That's where all of those drinking water standards have been set. And then another benefit, as we all told each other, is that we're all outdoor users. And so by protecting your source water, you also protect it for other users. And so that's also wildlife and recreation use in combination with your drinking water protection. And then enhancing a water system's resiliency. As I drove into Newport, there's a sign, drought, right? We all need to be mindful that quantity is important on the coast as well as quality. So how do we build a system's resilience when it comes to drinking water protection? And then I also have a little figure. I always like this one in my science class because I thought it was really cool that the Earth is 71% water covered. And so let's see, from that 71%, we have 96.5% of it in our ocean. And from that, 2.5% is what we can actually drink, unless you want to pay high costs for desalinating water. And so I just thought that this would be a good image to show that in a planet full of water, we're already limited in what we can actually use for our drinking water. So the multi-barrier approach. So this is supposed to show how to prevent contamination from impacting your drinking water. And why we're all here today is for source water protection. That's the first barrier. And in this sense, it's our first barrier to protect your drinking water. So known as natural infrastructure. And this is source water protection where you can keep your water clean. It helps lower your treatment costs and has fewer risks to public health. And so the first barrier is protecting your source water, and then it falls into more of this approach of, well, we got to treat it or monitor and test for it and before it gets into your tap water. So I think this figure is really good in illustrating that source water protection is the first line of defense and can oftentimes, just by keeping your risk down, protect public health in one of the most conservative ways possible. And then this slide is a lot. It's a lot, and I noticed from the back of the room, it might be hard to see. It's the new water cycle as of last year that the USGS, or the United States Geological Survey, put out. And I thought it did such a great job illustrating what is a water cycle. Oftentimes we talk about it and we have arrows going up and down in the atmosphere into groundwater. And as a system on the coast, you are with the ocean water cycle. You have a lot of different types of impacts than more inland public water systems. And so I wanted to ask, can you find where your source water area is? It's not Oregon, but would you be able to identify from what you know, where you drink, where you work, do you know where your source water area is? And from that, could you identify any potential risks to your source water area? And that could be both man-made and natural risks. So I'll give you some time to look at this. It's a lot.
We will share it afterwards for those who don't have bio.
Can't see it. And that's why I got you. The next slide is the simplified version of what I'm going for here, which is talking about to prevent contamination. It's good to know in your source water area, what are you experiencing already? And we break these up into point source and non-point source types of contamination. And so a point source is any sort of contamination that's released from the environment in a single or identifiable confined place. A non-point source is a little bit more vague. It does not have a single identifiable point of origin. Sorry, try to not use point in the definition. It's diffuse over a landscape. And so thinking about a coastal source water area, what types of point source and non-point sources would you be experiencing? And so from the simple version of, I guess you could say, the water cycle, you know, oftentimes we have a lot of systems that have in the bottom left their own septic systems. We have different types of, you know, agriculture on the coast. We have forestry on the coast, and those also come with their own pesticides and fertilizers. Those are actually a non-point source because they're spread across the landscape. And so, let's see what else. Manure, the agricultural, that as a non-point source can also introduce bacteria and other types of industrial solvents into your source water area. So septic systems more like a point source. That's a single identifiable point of origin. We have underground injection that can also be a point source. Other ones, I don't know, landfills, they can be regulated or non-regulated, still can be a point source if they're non-regulated. And let's see what else. I was thinking the natural types of non-point source would be sedimentation from your steep slopes or eroding stream banks, and then also fires. We've been having, you know, these drastic fires, and that leads to an increased amount of sedimentation. So also can be known as a non-point source type of contamination. And then, let's see. So now that we've laid out, you know, what a point source type of contamination is and a non-point source, what are some tools? So yeah, we have these in our water shed. What can I do so that we can help protect drinking water? Well, the Department of Environmental Quality has these source water assessment reports, and they've been updated already. 2016 was the year that they started doing all of their updates, and with that, they've been done for they've been completed for all community and non-transient, non-community systems. And so community system has 15 or more service connections, and they serve their residents year-round. A non-community, non-transient, non-community system, that's more of more than 25 users for about half of the year, 6 months. And so those are things like schools. And so we have source water assessments done for all of those types of systems. And so what is in this type of report? It details land use and ownership. It also has maps of nearby water systems and source water areas. We identify potential contamination sources and locations, and also set risk levels. And then we also include susceptibility analyses and strategies and resources to help reduce risk. And so with these source water assessment reports, you can use these to inform and develop action plans, so they can really be a good step to say, hey, you know, we'd like to start protecting our source water. Where do we start? Reading this report and becoming familiar with your watershed. Retna is our GIS specialist and continuously updating layers that we receive, and really using these reports as a resource and a first tool. This is what we've seen has really helped communities. And so they're also helpful in emergency response. Shout out, in case, you know, something happens in your watershed and you want to know, hey, will this potential event make it into, you know, our intake system? And so because we're also going to be sharing these slides, I have a bunch of links in here. And so the first one is our interactive map viewer. And so that has all of our updated source water assessment reports. It also details land use and other regulatory databases. I used to be in the cleanup program, so that's our environmental cleanup, and also leaking underground storage tank sites, and we include all of those layers, and those help with your point source and non-point source contamination understandings. The next link is this from EcoTrust. It's a coastal drinking water atlas and interactive web tool, which I believe Sustainable Northwest also helped develop, and so we've included that in here because it tells a good story about seeing a need for understanding what types of forests is the Oregon Coast dealing with, and they go into different types of imaging techniques and going into how old are our forests, are they at that age where they can be harvested for profit? And so it's a good tool to use to get a general sense of the Oregon coast and forest land. And then another link is the updated source water assessments that I've mentioned. And then the last one is essentially, we also have surface water and groundwater resource guides. And if you ever read a best management practice, we essentially detail, hey, if you have this type of issue in your watershed, what is a best management practice to deal with that sort of issue. It also details links to funding and resources. Some of these, their funding changes every year, so it's a really good stepping point for understanding funding, but we have more resources for you here today, as we would like to keep updating those on a yearly basis, so that you have the tools to succeed when it comes to funding. And so my next slide is, hey, your water system needs partners. They have limited resources, as we heard today. Some have one operator, maybe 1.5 operators. And so, really trying to help your water system in this type of capacity with source water protection. It's not required. If you go to the Safe Drinking Water Act, the multi-barrier approach, your source water protection is not regulated, and that's why our program in drinking water protection is a voluntary program. We don't have any regulations within our own program. Also, a lot of the source areas outside of an actual water system's jurisdiction. So what is upland of that intake? Water systems need help with just managing that type of source area. And then also, watershed restoration enhancement is normally not in the operator's guidebook. And so how can we help our operators with groundwater protection or surface water protection, and to kind of take that burden off of our water systems. And so we're here today to collaborate. So what are the benefits of collaboration? Well, it broadens community support and conservation, for conservation and restoration activities, enhances regional knowledge of water quality and land use planning, and leverages resources for funding sources that have specific call-outs. And so sometimes they're only available to public water suppliers. Sometimes it requires a certain type of land, ownership type, or they'll give a priority to if it's actually in a drinking water source area. And so what are partnerships? Well, they're land trusts, soil and water conservation districts, watershed councils, and non-governmental organizations. And they typically all have common goals, which is to build diverse and resilient ecosystems, approach different types of best practices in a non-regulatory way. And also, they know similar areas of the coast, and so sharing that knowledge and helping tackle these different types of point source and non-point source types of contamination or pollution. And with that, addressing these wide regional range of issues. And then also mentioning what's good for fish is good for drinking water as well. And so sometimes, different land trusts or watershed councils are very involved with aquatic species, and so how do we help each other in that sort of capacity? And they're also really good at outreach, which outreach is hard. And so everyone needs help trying to get the word out when you're trying to work on your on any sort of drinking water protection project, especially sometimes funding requires that you have different types of outreach components. And so the next slide I've included is also as more of a resource. It has a link to our main page, our main drinking water page, and it's to help partner organizations find that source water assessment, and then through that identify potential drinking water source areas and partners, and then utilize the updated source water assessment. And so I keep shouting out to Retna, but we do have a variety of these GIS layers that she works hard to keep updated, and it's from when I first started the state just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, it's crazy to see how much GIS that we implement in this program alone. And so a very good resource if you're trying to get some spatial maps to help identify And the last thing is we do have funding resources. Our page has been updated for this workshop. And again, I keep this nice little handout that we have. So we're, as a program, trying to update funding sources on a regular basis as we see that as a need. And so using this website as a reference, I hope would be a good start for everyone, or a resource, sorry. And then my last slide is, we, like I keep saying, we're a voluntary program and we want to help. And so here's all of our emails and our protection page. So Julie is our program coordinator, and then myself, I'm statewide, and then Laura, Western region, like she said, Cascades over, California border, Oregon border up, and then stops in Lincoln City.
Lincoln, Yamhill, and Marion.
Thank you.
Counties.
And Tristan's our northwest and eastern regions, everything but Laura's, and then Retna is our GIS specialist, also statewide. So thank you all for listening. That was what I had on source water protection.